Hello and welcome to Prime Cut. This special one-off show is all about the Voice of the Agent survey, which is one of the most in-depth pieces of research into the residential property market, but specifically for agents operating in the premium, prime and super prime markets and what it means to them. There's an awful lot to go over today, so thankfully I'm joined by two esteemed guests. Firstly is Marie Fritz, who is the Managing Director of Buyer Design Northamptonshire, so a veritable expert on all things premium property. And none other than Simon Leadbetter of Unchained Marketing, who is the author of The Voice of the Agent survey. Thought it was pretty important to have you here to talk about it.
Delighted to be here.
No, thank you for being here. So let's get into it. We've got quite a lot to talk about today. So I think the plan is to break it down into like 4 or 5 chapters, something like that.
Absolutely.
So why don't we kick off with talking about like what we're actually talking about here, because we're talking about the more premium end of the market. So let's define that as far as the research goes, so we can put some context around it. What price points are we talking about?
Absolutely. So the Voice of the Agent, it's in its second year, and this time we really decided to go for it and get a huge sample. So we got 841 people filled it in, 841 agents spend a lot of time filling in this survey. What that allowed us to do was actually go, and actually some of these agents are saying they deal with this level of property, so we're actually able to slice the data out and do a specific bit of research on what the prime is. Now, where you define prime is very much up to you as a business.
Yeah.
Some people see it as £500,000 plus, which is prime transactional. Some people wouldn't consider prime until $1 million. Certain people would say it starts at 5 million.
Yeah.
But for the purpose of this, we tend to use 600,000 because then we start to see a change in behaviour across the scores. Up to about 600, it's pretty similar in terms of the results you get.
Yeah, okay.
But at 600, it starts to skew. At 750, it takes away into being a completely different environment.
And it's quite geographically dependent, that, isn't it, on where you are. And a broad brushstroke, the further you are from London, the lower that number becomes, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Marie, you're in Northamptonshire. Where does that market really start from for you?
About 500,000 it starts,
Yeah.
but personally I like to stick about that kind of 650 as a minimum. I'll take something on a little bit less if it's, beautiful grade 2 listed character, but realistically 500,000 plus is probably prime in Northamptonshire.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And actually you find a huge concentration of London and the southeast, obviously,
Yeah.
where prime agents operate.
Yeah.
But to me, and this comes from my time at Knight Frank and at Hamptons, prime can actually mean best of breed. So it doesn't need to be necessarily that 600, 750,000, but they'll generally deal with those kind of properties.
Yeah.
But they might pick that absolute picture postcard cottage or folly
Yeah.
that's less, but it fits the lifestyle of someone who's living that prime lifestyle.
Yes. And I'd just say as well, like speaking from a national perspective too, and for everyone listening, that I think some of the things to take away from here aren't necessarily dependent on price, because that can be in somebody else's area.
Yeah.
But in your marketplace, that top 25% of your market, doesn't matter what price that is, they will self-identify as that, and they will feel themselves as being the premium end of their particular local marketplace.
Upper quartile is a good way of looking at it.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
the upper quartile.
Yeah. Grand. Okay, so let's kind of get into it then. In the research, when we let's talk about sales for a moment then, because I think like the thing that blew me away was talking about the value of that marketplace, especially when we look at what that means from not only transaction numbers, fee levels, what that actually looks like, and how maybe underrepresented the premium market is in conversation in a estate agency.
It's quite mind-blowing. If we talk specifically about fees, is that what
I think? But let's go with that. Let's start with that.
Okay. 83% of the instructions in the UK, and this is from my data, we use 20EA data and Voice of the Agent fee data, we're able to apply average fee by house price to average house price by number of instructions, gives you a number of instructions and fees.
Yeah.
They're only representing 45% of fees. So nearly over 4/5 of the market is representing less than half of the fees earned in the whole of real estate residentially. The top 0.2%, the £5 million plus, is representing 10%. And if you take the prime, 600,000 plus, 17% of instructions, 55% of fees.
So just to emphasise that point then, so properties that sell over £600,000, just that, which most people would say, oh, that's a niche market, represents how much of the fees?
55%.
So 55% of the entire
All
industry
fees in the industry.
of what the pound notes that every single estate agency in the country is chasing happens over £600,000.
Yes, and it just skews away from that level that a ever smaller part of instructions represents such a massively higher percentage of fees. That 0.2% representing 10% of fees whereas 83% represents only 45%.
Yeah.
The market is so skewed from a value perspective towards the prime end.
I think it's such a crazy thing, isn't it, between the transaction numbers and the actual fees that follow it.
Well, I mean, the average fee for a mainstream house, so this kind of where you get a 1.1% fee.
Okay, so the average is what? So 1.1% fee for what's the average house price?
£267,000.
Yeah.
And they're earning 2,976 quid.
So £3,000 for a average residential sale.
You go up to prime, £600,000 plus. You've let to 1.6% fee.
Yeah.
Your average house is 1.14 million. Your fee is £18,000.
Such a big difference.
But then,
It's just
but then you get into the super prime, £5 million plus, 2.5% fees, average value 9.4 million, a fee of £235,000.
It's just bonkers, isn't it?
That can be more than somebody's whole turnover.
That is almost equal to the average house price.
Yeah.
The fee that is being earned is almost the same as the average house price.
So I always quite like talking about like the market that's arguably a bit less flashy from that for a few reasons. One is because I think it happens more, and secondly because I think that market, it happens more. Obviously there are more of them, but also it churns more, it turns better. I think you've got quite an interesting take on this, Marie, because you came from a corporate background originally, dealing with what would you average property prices?
300,000,
Yeah.
300,000.
So how does your experience of fees and what we were just talking about there relate to your experience of operating in the resi market and the premium market?
I think
Does it bear out?
It does, because the premium market, those vendors are looking for value and they're ready to pay for it. I mean, they're driving these six-figure cars. They're not driving the beat-up Honda that's broke. So they look at that value. They're happy paying for the value. And the agents who say that the prime aren't ready to pay for those higher fees because everybody does 1%, well, that's a value issue, because if you were to propose good value, those people do understand that and they're ready to pay for it.
Yeah.
But at the bottom end, I think there's this image of all agents are the same, they all do the same, you know, my house is 300K, whether I choose one of these 10 estate agents, they're all the same. So it's very difficult to differentiate yourself there. But at the premium end, it's quite a lot easier to say, here's how we market to international markets and XYZ, and I'm 2.5%. And it's just a different conversation.
I mean, and this is all credit to you, David. You know, when we discussed it last year, we'd done the survey. We had actually not cut the data of fee by house price. And as a result of our conversation, we did it. And
I did say David Mintz the other day that you did this for me.
And I'll give you the full credit for it, because actually I kick myself for not having thought about it, because now it's a regular feature in the report and we've done it across sales and lettings. Just as you say, Maria, it's dramatic, the way it just takes off. So people who say people at certain ends won't pay a certain level of fee, with respect, page 48 of this report says that's nonsense. Because this is the wisdom of the crowd. People are achieving it, and they're achieving it consistently, higher fees for higher house prices.
Just for people that are listening to this and haven't got the report in hand, just tell everyone, if you've still got your thumb on the page there, just quickly go up from, roughly what does it go like? So you've got the average house price at 1.1?
Yeah, so let's start at 500,000, 1.1.
Yeah.
Then we go up to 600,000, 1.2. 750,000, 1.4. 1 million plus 1.4, bit higher 1.4, just 1.4. 2 to 3 million, 1.8. 3 to 5, 2, 5 million, 2.5.
Yeah.
And it just rockets away. And it's exactly the same picture in lettings as well.
Yeah.
But that gets extraordinarily high fees as well.
Yeah.
So that it can't be done is a mindset problem.
100%. Every time I speak to agents and they all say the same, but I've got competition. We've all got 10 plus agents in competition,
And
direct.
You have more competition in the prime end. If you actually look at the number of estate agents, prime agents say they compete with, it's marginally higher for the prime end.
Really?
So you wouldn't think that. That surprised me.
That's really interesting, yeah.
But they feel the average is like 12-ish. For the prime, it's about 13 and a bit.
Again,
so
just
it's
define
marginally.
prime for me, you're talking about properties.
£600,000 plus.
Right. And they're saying there's more competition.
They feel that there is more competition they're up against.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yep.
Because I would have said the complete opposite. Like, and I often say this when I'm talking to agents that are in the resi market, and say, okay, name your 10 competitors in the resi market, and then quickly come up with 20. Right, now think about the property market over 600,000-700,000 in their area.
Yeah.
Name 10, and they get to 2, 3, and it dries up. So it's really interesting. They're saying they feel that there's more competition.
I think probably what you'll find is people are able to identify more high street brands. So there will be the 12 high street brands they can think of on their high street. But I bet at the prime end, they're thinking of the individuals more. and the self-employed more, and
that's
the people operating in that space who are very, very niche players, but they're very small, but they just deal with the prime. And also, they'll be pulling in the national names. So if you're a local market dealing with the mainstream, you're not probably going to be competing with Knight Frank or Savills or Strutt or By Design potentially. You know, it's kind of like all of a sudden you get to above a certain house price, the prime big people come into the market and they're suddenly interested in that range of properties. So, you know, you suddenly have to add 3 or 4 names to your normal stable because of the national prime brands.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We were talking about fees before we went on air, and you said something which made me laugh. And we were looking at that curve going from the 1.1 around the average house price and then up. just share what you said to us when we were having a coffee
I just said I couldn't believe that it was only at the 5 million plus that it was 2.5% plus VAT. I thought that yes, it goes up, but it's still too low for what we do, for the money we put in compared to Australia, Canada, America, all that. Even 1.4% at, what was it, $1 million, like that's still low. I can't believe that that's not higher. And I think it's the mental kind of blockage that agents have. They go, oh, I can't be a 2.5% agent. Why?
And also,
why?
You'll have a lot of people who are dealing with the mainstream who are extremely good agents who are charging 1.1%.
Yeah.
They'll get a prime property and they'll still charge 1.1%.
Or sometimes less because they think...
They think they're getting a good price. Like, oh, I'll do 0.95 because I'm actually making more. That's when you charge more.
It won't cross their mind that they're dealing with a completely different market of people who are buying on value. You know, the kind of person, certainly at the very prime end, doesn't ask the price of the watch.
No.
They're not going to quite buy on the price of it. They're buying because of what it is. So if they're buying a certain brand and a certain type of agent, they'll go, oh, you're 2.5%. Of course, I wouldn't expect to be anything less. You want some pre-marketing paid for, contribution? Of course, not a problem at all.
Yeah.
What else would you like me to do? You're the expert. You know, you're not just a volume chaser. You're a value creator.
Yeah.
And I want you to guide me in what the best thing is I can do for my property. So you want 2.5%? Fair enough, 2.5%.
Yeah, there's some agents I speak to who, there's one in particular I'm not going to name, but they are the only real luxury agent in the area. And they say, but there's so much competition, we can't charge more. And they're 1% to maybe 1.25. I'm thinking, but you have everything on the table in front of you to charge 2.5 because you're the only real luxury agent in your area. Why aren't you taking advantage of that? And it's this mental block. And you think if you could just break that block and even charge 0.25 more, how much more turnover would you have yearly? It's incredible, but it's just this block of the agent themselves.
I was speaking to one chief executive who will remain nameless of one agency. He used to be a very successful branch manager for one of the major brands. And he decided at Christmas he was going to go in and say to them, we're going to push the fees up to 1.75%. You know, I think 1.25, 1.5, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Very frustrating for him. He wants to be this 1.75% agency. And they did it. And he said he kicked himself because if he just said, I wish we'd have gone for 2%. Complete mindset. If they got to 1.75% relatively easily, they could have got to 2% if he just told them that's what he wanted.
Yeah. Anything less is not acceptable, and then it changed your mindset again. And I think a lot of agents lose that listing before they even walk through the front door, because they just automatically think, oh, I'm not going to get this, oh, I'm going to have to choose. And then what's going to happen? You're not going to get it, or you're going to get it at a very cheap fee.
The other good thing I see from the very best agents is the graded fee. So they say, this is my rate at the price that you want, but everything above, the percentage goes up.
Yeah.
So if I get you 1.5 million, it's 1.5%. Get you 2 million, it's 2%. If you get 2.5 million, 2.5%. They're not the numbers, but it's that simple philosophy of why wouldn't you pay me more to get you more? And then we're totally jumping together in this. And I know that's a fair price, but if I can create a really good competitive market for you, because these are often quite unique properties, therefore it's worth what the buyer will pay. If I do a graded rate with you, you get a really good deal if I just get the asking price, but I get a better deal if I get the price up. So we're actually working as strategic partners rather than just some transactional relationship.
I actually do that quite often, and I say to them, we're
the best agents.
Oh, thank you. But we're part of a team. I say, you and I win, you lose, I lose. So if I make you more money, I deserve more money. And they laugh at that, and I go...
And I wish I'd realised that when I was selling properties in the past. I should have graded fees and said to them, I'll pay you more if you get me more.
Yeah.
Because they're, you know, once they've got a deal, they go, the deal's done, I just want the money now. Whereas if you do a graded fee, they go, hold on, I think I can get you another 20,000, another 30,000, another 40,000 if I just work at this a bit harder. So yeah, I wish I'd done that. So
there's such a discrepancy between, coming back to the $3,000 fee for your residential property, what do you say, an 18 grand fee for...
Yeah, 18 for prime.
18 for prime. So, and like that's why, I mean, I keep banging on about that principle so much, that agents should be in the premium market because of those reasons, that the simple multiplication of a high house price and a high fee, I think it still feels to me like there's less competition, but either way, there's less noise in the premium market. There's less marketing budgets, I think, in total, if you compare to some of the big national brands in the resi market. And also, there's an element to talk about from an overhead perspective, that from a volume position, you don't need stacks and stacks of staff if you're listing 15 properties versus 50. Yeah. But why do you think that isn't such common knowledge? Why aren't all agents chasing that premium? I don't understand it. Why aren't all agents chasing that premium market?
I think it can be quite intimidating.
Yeah, the daunting part.
You know, if you walk into a prime property and it's not your life at all, you know, I think you've relayed a story about someone who walked into a house and went, "Oh my word, this is amazing. I've never seen anything like it." Like, that's not the reaction you want from someone. You want it to be very kind of, this is a very high quality house of the kind that I think you'd like to live in. And the kind of people who live here have this kind of lifestyle. Whereas if it's not your lifestyle at all, it can make you feel quite uncomfortable. Wealth can be very intimidating. And I think if you're comfortable with wealth, it makes it much easier to sell wealth.
Yeah.
I think for most people aren't wealthy.
Yeah.
So it's not recent they're exposed to. But I'm sure, you know, you've got better insight on this than me.
I think that daunting part is probably it. Again, the self-doubt of a lot of agents will probably think, "Oh, I can't do that. Look at those beautiful houses. I can't do that. I can't sell that." And then they never even try to break into the top because they've just stopped themselves right in the beginning. But those people who always wanted more and they can, but you're right that you get to the point where my first £1 million house, I was like that. I was going, "Oh my goodness, this is amazing." I didn't say that, but inside I felt it. Now I walk in and I go, "It's a nice house," but I'm used to it. I have to see something incredible for me to really go, wow. And that's the difference in mindset. And dealing with the people we deal with, multimillionaires, CEOs, like, it's a different interaction than the £300,000 house you're selling. And I think as agents, you need to be comfortable with the type of people you're dealing with and how to deal with those people. And I think a lot of people at the lower end aren't confident enough to even try.
So talk to us about that then in two senses. One, like the transition from the resi market to the premium, then how you do deal differently with that market.
I think you just need to give more value. These people expect a lot more from you. They expect you to be on your beck and call, 24/7. And they're paying me for that. I'm a high fee agent because they have me on hand all the time and I'm there to fix their problems. I'm there to guide them. They're paying to not have stress. Yeah. That's what these people, they have the money to do so they rather keep their own time and pay somebody else to deal with the stress. And the bottom end of the market, which is another part of the statistics, is that people would rather pay less for agents and have less qualifications. That just shows that some people at the bottom end of the market, they just want the cheap agent, the cheap fee. They don't really care. But the top end of the market really want to know that you are going above and beyond. You're making, you're mitigating all the risks, all of that. That's what they're paying you to do. So again, it's just a much more in-depth sales strategy, I guess, than the bottom where it's just churning it out. You can't do that at the top.
It's less of a commodity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's the opposite of a commodity. Yeah. Actually, sorry, go on.
And your customer experience has to be incredibly different.
Yeah.
I remember having this conversation with a business that we both know in terms of how a prime brand differs from a mainstream brand. Your competitor is not other estate agents. It's other prime customer experiences they have. If they travel first class, if they drive a very nice six-figure car, if they wear tailored clothing, if they go to the best restaurants, they'll expect a certain level of service. And unless you're in a position to deliver that, you're not just a transactional mindset of just get the volume through. It's a very different experience as they're going, well, when I bought my £250,000 car, this is the experience I got. I'm now buying a £25 million house. Why would I not get a very, very good experience? I'm amazed that I can get an iPhone and it's the most beautiful packaging that you will ever have in your life. And even the way the box opens with this soft, as it comes open, it perfectly fits. That whole experience is designed to give you this real tangible experience of opening that phone. You buy a house, here's the keys. They should arrive on a velvet cushion with a butler and 12 bottles of champagne, flowers,
I
chocolates.
had somebody the other day who said they were buying, I think, 800,000 or 900,000. They went to the office, people couldn't find the keys. And then they found the keys finally and say, here you go. And this is somebody's most exciting day of their life. And some of these people have worked so hard to get to that £800,000 house. And you can't even find the keys. Like, what experience is that? You know, meet them at the house with a bottle of champagne. Make it special. And
the majority of people who are wealthy in this country, despite comments about inherited wealth, I've just written an article for the excellent newsletter that David produces, the Prime newsletter, about the fact that wealth is either mainly made or earned. Made being entrepreneurial, earned being high income earners. A minority is inherited. So these people have literally bust a gut to get to where they've got to, and you go, we can't find the keys.
And there is a lot of level of pride at these prices too, where, you know, I have somebody selling at 1.65 million. And I asked him, what made you buy this house? And he went, pride. Because we're conditioned to go 500,000, 750, 900. If I get the £1 million house, I'll be happy. Then you get the £1 million house and you're not happy. Oh, I want the 1.5 million house. And you're conditioned to want more and more and more. So if you think of how much people work, how hard they work to get to that next level in life, and you can't find the keys. Like, it's just, I mean, no wonder you're 1% agent.
Just to pick up on something that you said and maybe take it in a slightly different direction as well, is there was I think you were referencing a question in the survey that gave consumers, it was a question to consumers, not agents.
Yeah.
And basically said, would you rather have more regulation and higher fees or less regulation and
lower fees?
Even lower fees. And they said, yeah, we'll have that one. They said, yeah, we'll have less regulation, as if the industry was unregulated enough.
Yeah,
I mean, our fees are woeful. I mean, we've all traveled around the world and seen different agents, and we're like, why do you even bother getting out of bed?
Yeah, exactly.
So 1 in 4 people, more regulation and higher fees. So 1 in 4 people would be that. 31% current regulation and current fees. 13% lighter regulation and lower fees. I don't know how we could be more lightly regulated as an industry.
It's so broken.
And lower fees than what we currently charge. And then, maybe not surprisingly, a third don't know.
Yeah.
They don't have a strong opinion. But it's almost like we need to persuade more of the current regulation and current fees to get behind more regulation, higher fees. Yeah. Because when you look at what they want, as in, do you want it regulated? Absolutely, 4/5, massive majority want the industry to be want to be properly regulated, which it isn't at the moment.
But then they're not ready to pay for it.
They're not willing to pay for it yet. So an education program on what it would mean.
I think, is this fair to say that most of the industry, I think it's a decent chunk of the industry would want the regulation and want the higher fees to come with it, obviously. I think from what we're hearing in the news, ROPA looks pretty dead.
Yeah.
So the legislation isn't coming to save you. So if you want higher fees, you've got to do something about it yourselves as agents to justify it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think, get qualified, join industry bodies, get the official letters. Be a professional. Don't be a tradesperson. You wouldn't let a brain surgeon operate in your head unless they had a significant number of letters after their name. You wouldn't go to an amateur dentist. Why would you sell your most expensive and most valuable asset, which you've worked to acquire? Why would you get someone unqualified to deal with it? So for me, the industry, 81% of agents say they want regulation, more regulation, tighter regulation. 79% of consumers.
So there's too many who don't know what they're doing, who make bad mistakes that cost these vendors thousands of pounds. And somebody who would have known better could have mitigated those risks. So there's just, you could start an agency tomorrow, have nothing under your name, and take on £2 million houses.
Yeah. I'm a marketer.
Just ridiculous.
I'm a marketer. I'm not an estate agent, lettings agent, and I've worked with the best in the industry. I could literally tomorrow, with no actual knowledge of the industry, go out and start an estate agent. As long as I joined the right bodies, had the right accreditations and got the AML and the HMRC stuff done properly, so I didn't fall foul of that. Maybe even decided whether I'd even bother with GDPR, I don't really need it, do I? All those things aside, I could start selling houses, and it's like, the risks with that are enormous, and you're going to give me your keys to walk into your house and show people around. It always blows my mind. It blows my mind that we just haven't done it, and for some reason, governments of all stripes have kept putting it into the long grass and not done it when the consumers in the industry want it.
Yeah.
So let's use that as a jumping off point. You are a marketer, so let's talk about marketing. From your perspective, what are the biggest differences in marketing between your, let's just call them residential agents, dealing in all ends of the market, to specifically those dealing in the premium market and above?
So what's really interesting is there's some quite sharp differences between the prime and the mainstream. For a start, an aside on this, is the titles that they read, are the industry titles.
Yeah.
They read more titles overall, so they're obviously more in touch with what the market is, but you'd absolutely include things like prime resi.
So you're talking about trade press.
Trade press. So they are more active readers of all the trade press. So they're clearly people who wish to be more informed about what's going on in the market. We also had a cut in which is in the report. And by the way, the report is you can download it for free. I'm sure we'll put a link to that in the post about it. Growth agents invest about the same amount in marketing. We saw a bit of a difference last year where growth agents invest a little bit more, but it's about pretty much equal. Margins of error, I just got to say it's the same. About 10.4% of their income is invested in marketing. Prime spend more on marketing by about 13%. Now, if you consider their revenue is so much higher anyway, it's not that they're just spending more because they've got more money. They're spending a greater percentage of their money on marketing, which is kind of interesting because that means they're literally outgunning their peers with what they do in marketing. They are more active across all channels, and they are massively more active across things like LinkedIn, Instagram, and bizarrely enough, TikTok. Whereas a lot of the mainstream, it is Facebook and maybe one or two others. These are more active across all social media channels, but specifically, and it's a lesson, it's a truism, if you want to go for the wealthy, you want to include LinkedIn more in your armory because that's where professionals hang out. So there are some stark differences, and it's kind of like they're not marketing in the same way.
It's interesting you're saying that not only they're spending more, prime agents are spending more, but prime agents are also doing more. There's no silver bullet, there is no easy win. You have to be doing more across all channels. The other thing that stood out to me, forgive me if I've got this wrong, but more prime agents have their marketing outsourced to external companies. Is that right?
Yes, I'll get the numbers. But while I'm scrolling to that, I thought it was interesting that they do more direct mail, significantly more public relations, significantly more magazine advertising, significantly more online newsletters, significantly more newspaper advertising. They are twice as likely to have their own in-house magazine.
Yeah.
Do you know what that screams out to me, though? That, for me, is telling me the bottom end of the market rely on Rightmove. That's literally what they do. They stick it online, wait for the phone to ring, and that doesn't work in the prime market. You need to have an actual marketing strategy.
And it justifies the higher fees as well, because you are actually investing in the marketing of those properties.
And absolutely. And to your point, they're more likely to have a dedicated marketing team. So they're more likely to have someone who's dedicated, whereas most agents will have someone who has marketing as one of their tasks. It's not their primary function. But they are significantly more likely to have an external marketing consultant or agency working with them. So they've gone to find a specialist.
Because they know the value of it.
And they're working with a specialist. Now, the largest single number is they have a dedicated marketing team, but they are much more likely than the mainstream agents to actually have an external consultant with them. It's good. More than 1 in 10 have an external consultant helping them. Nearly half have a dedicated marketing team.
What we do is certainly that. Different people for different expertise in different areas, be it PR, be it our media buying, be it the digital ads, be it social and paid being different as well. Like, have specialists in each one that really know what they're doing, rather than trying to get someone who thinks they know a bit of everything.
Doing video. Bring in the specialists. Do it properly. And again, I think we're much more comfortable with the homemade style post-lockdown. We don't mind that slightly rough and ready look for certain videos. But if you're going to do something for the prime market specifically, I think they expect to see quality. And it's like we teach in marketing, it's code ridiculously applied. If you stand for quality, everything you do should be quality. I remember a conversation with a partner at a certain business I work with where they were persuaded they actually started to need to getting tailored suits. People at that company shouldn't be wearing off-the-peg suits. They should be wearing tailored suits because people know. Certain people will look by the cut and go, that's off the peg. That's not a tailored suit. Now, less important than it was 20 years ago, getting less important all the time as we move to a much more Californian style of doing business. But for certain people, it still matters. And I think, reflect your customer in the way they want to be. And, I would teach everyone is when you're on your own, write down every task you do. Get a glass of wine, sit down, write every task you do. Highlight all the things you don't like or you're not good at. That is the job description of the next person you hire. Because not only will be good at it, they'll enjoy it, they'll be better at it, and they'll be cheaper than you. There's a win, 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 win all the way down.
But see, this is why the 1% fees, let's say you, at 800,000, or even just 600,000, 1%, $6,000. We spend so much on marketing. By the time you actually pay the marketing, there's nothing left. And you think, how are you running a business? How are you making money?
and you only have a 50% chance, hopefully better for you guys, but you only have a 50% chance of winning that £6,000, and you've already sunk the money.
Yeah.
So getting fees below £10,000-12,000, it's very hard.
It costs you money to sell the house.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So taking the marketing conversation on a step, looking at the role of technology in there, PropTech, MarTech, AI. So let's talk about some of the differences here on how prime agents operate compared to their residential counterparts.
So they are more adopting of PropTech, but bizarrely less adopting of AI.
Yeah.
That
surprises me.
That surprised me too. It's like, so that's why I love doing research.
Marie, do you use AI?
Yes, and so I don't use like ChatGPT and stuff enough because I know it could, but because we have AI in our CRM system, I use that a lot. So I do use it daily.
Okay.
But I could use other types of AI websites more.
Okay, that's super interesting. I didn't know you did that. Sorry.
But you know, things like Home Search 20EA, big users of, much bigger users of, from the prime perspective. There's a solution which we were talking about earlier, address intelligence, significantly. It's a small number, but they're significantly more likely to do it. And I know some of the larger prime agencies have really adopted address intelligence as a solution, but they are more adopting of all the prop tech. And I think they've found a way to, and actually it's perverse, because if you are a mainstream agent with these lower margins, you should have automated everything to maximize the margin you will get back. If you have a bit of fat in the business because it's prime, you could afford to do these things manually or less efficiently. So it is counterintuitive to me that should be it, but research doesn't lie with the margins of error we've got.
My cogs were literally turning on that same thought as well, thinking that if you're in the resi market and you're all about volume, and volume means low margins, then every bit of efficiency you can squeak out of it, and every person you can replace with some bit of technology is going to be more on the bottom line.
I think it's also AI is the daunting side. Again, same thing as kind of higher fees and working in the top end of the market. If you think of everybody who's worked with home search and prop tech and stuff like that, that's been there longer than AI. And a lot of people are quite, I don't know how to use AI properly, quite daunting. So they don't jump in, but they're going to have to jump in.
That's actually borne out in the data, because one of the biggest indexes you get between the mainstream or the whole market and prime is they're much less likely to use AI for word production. I think because they feel they want to create a very bespoke, human-written.
That is true.
They use it for a lot of the back-end services, finances, accounting, cybersecurity. They're using it for that. Yeah. But whereas it's 3/4 of everyone is using it for word content production, just over a half of the prime are using it for that. Yeah. And fewer of them are using it. Yeah. So it's a much smaller number. And I think it's because they want to create a much more tailored. It's like, would you want an AI created suit or a handmade bespoke suit?
That is true. But you can also tell when it's an AI regurgitated post.
I saw one the other day. I'm so tempted to not comment and say like, thank you, ChatGPT, for this post.
People they don't tweak it to themselves. No. They just copy paste, and you can tell it's a robot who wrote it.
Yeah. So on that particular note though, Simon, from your experience in marketing, what AI tools would you recommend agents use, especially if they want to be more successful in that premium and prime market?
So I think you've landed on something very early on, is don't post what it produces.
Utilize it.
Nuance it, put it in your own language. One of the things that people don't understand is AI is as good as the prompt. And what you write as a prompt will not be a good prompt unless you've been through a very good prompt course. The first thing you ever do with a prompt is ask the AI to improve the prompt. So that when you write a prompt, tell the AI, please improve this prompt. You should actually have got AI to analyze your own writing style and ask it to give you a writing style prompt. So when it writes it in your style automatically. So it's not only improved your prompt, it's also then stylized what it then writes in the way that you naturally write. Still don't post it. Still personalize it. I'm going to talk about tools in a second, but then put it into something like Grammarly. Grammarly is the best proofing fascist in the world, and it will make your writing much more accurate. And there's another really good one I discovered about a month ago called Hemingway. Hemingway is a fantastic checker of whether you're writing sentences that are too long, too short, overly complicated, using jargon, and it just makes it more easy to read. And then don't post it, put it into Grammarly. Always then just check it, read it, put it into Word and read it and make sure you feel it's comfortably what you would want to say. It sounds time consuming, but it will produce words in seconds, and you can spend your time crafting those words to be a better kind of version of who you are. I say also things like, if you want to write a description of an area, go to Wikipedia, find the Wikipedia listing, copy and paste the Wikipedia listing into your tool and say, use this as the basis of it.
That's a good shout.
Because in Wikipedia, it will be accurate. It will hallucinate and give you parks, manor houses, lakes, seas that you don't have, that are taken from your neighbours because they've appeared somewhere in a blog attached to your area. So the Wikipedia, and then also add in the things that you know would be interesting. Stations, schools, commute times, all those kind of things. Great tools. ChatGPT 4.0 is fantastic. Worth having the professional subscription. It's such a big difference from the 3.5 free version. My favourite is called Perplexity, which actually puts a source. It's almost a better version of Google. Because you type in any question, it will give you all the answers, a proper article with the source of where the information is taken from, so you can go and check it. Massive fan of Gemini, Google's version. And another one that I came across recently that I really like using is Claude, C-L-A-U-D-E. Again, it's a very interesting, it writes in a very nice way actually. It doesn't sound as robotic as ChatGPT. But one thing I've learned to do, and really good people with it, is you get them to talk to each other. Write a prompt, use a prompt in one to feed the other, get that one to improve the prompt for that one, get that one to improve the prompt for that one, and you just use them in interaction with each other until it created something interesting. And you have a debate between the two arguments of what the two arguments would be. Have one playing one person, one playing the other, and get them to debate.
Yeah, you've gone way further than I ever have.
Yeah, this is how Skynet starts.
And then don't put it in charge of your nuclear defence, because there lies madness. But it's a tool, and as I teach on my 30 years of marketing course that you've been to, is it's only as good as the human who's dealing with it.
Yeah.
So people who say to me it's not very good, I say, show me your prompt. And they'll go, write me an article about Boxmoor in Hemel Hempstead. Okay, you've not given it enough to go on, and you need to teach it, treat it like a very, very smart yet primitive robot.
Yeah.
So you've got to give it as many instructions. Like I use VAs, virtual assistants, and they're all really brilliant people, but they're as good as the instructions you give them.
Yeah.
Exactly the same with AI.
There are three that I use, and I appreciate I'm not an agent doing agent things all the time, so they may or may not be relevant, but three that really blew me away, and I'm sharing them because Simon Whale shared one with me, which I was super impressed with, which is a free one on Zoom called Fathom, and then you load it onto Zoom.
Oh,
and
it transcribes, doesn't it?
It's better than transcribe. It takes all the notes and the actions and the minutes, and it is like frighteningly good. Like I don't know how it makes sense of the nonsense that I talk on Zoom, but it really does. It's one of them. Loom is really good. If you're ever doing like screen share stuff and it makes a little transcript of that, it's really impressive. And then for anyone who's making video content, especially long form that wants it in short, Opus is really good. That just, you chuck it a YouTube link and it chops it up for you. It's really, really smart.
And one of the things I say to people is, we're all very time poor. Any long form content that you want, there's a tool that actually does it to video as well. I'll find it, we'll put a link about it, is get it to basically copy and paste the long form into ChatGPT. Ask it to reduce it. Give me a too long didn't read function. And then if it's really interesting, you've got the key points, and then you can decide if you want to read the article or not. So again, use it as a summarizer.
I think it's something you said, that people are afraid that AI is going to take their jobs, but it's people who are utilizing AI who's going to take their jobs.
100%. I mean, we should be teaching our children this stuff because in reality, unless you have mastered AI, it's like not mastering the internet.
Yeah.
It's like, this change has already happened. So embrace it, learn how to master it, and work out how you can use it to benefit you.
Because it's still a baby.
Yeah.
Can you imagine in 5 years, 10 years where it's going to be?
Going to be extraordinary.
Scary.
I mean, the speed at which it's changing, and again, there should be and there are legitimate concerns of where this ends up.
So, taking a bit of a handbrake turn to change the subject now is something that really surprised me about reading the difference from the prime agents from the residential agents is how, trying to think of the best way to word this, how much less discrimination they felt. I thought that's really strange.
Can of worms.
Yeah. It's just...
Yes.
So
It's
what do you
very,
think about
very
that?
different. And I'm scrolling up. So if you look at mental health, people in the prime space report they have experienced less mental health issues in the last year, but significantly.
Yeah.
Than the bottom end.
Than the mainstream.
Mainstream,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Mainstream. So, I know, and it's scary, the mainstream. 2/5 of agents in the mainstream say they've faced mental health challenges in the last year. The UK is 24%, 25%. So there's significantly more problems in the mainstream than the population as a whole. Prime is like the population as a whole, 1 in 4. Very, very different. And then you scroll down to
Hang on, just say that again, sorry. So mainstream agencies have the same mental health challenges as the general population, is that right?
Mainstream have significantly higher.
Oh, sorry, right.
And the prime is the same as the main population, general population.
Yeah, so 1 in 4 people in the
That's
UK
bad.
have mental challenges a year, according to the NHS in England. So 1 in 4 people will have had a mental health challenge. 2/5 in the mainstream will have said they've had a mental health challenge in the last year.
So we were talking about this before.
We
Marie.
were, yeah.
What's your
I would say
theory?
it doesn't surprise me at all, because when I started at Connells, that kind of culture that's driven into you is targets and get those listings and blah, blah, blah. And I remember, not hitting my targets for a month, and I'd have the director at the top calling me going, Marie, what's happening? At that time, I was getting married, I was pregnant, like there was other things on my plate. And it's just constant drive. So that culture that's created is a very stressful one with very strong targets and a lot of stress. At the top end of the market, you're more, I don't know, we choose our clients, it's quality over quantity.
Yeah.
If I don't like or I don't get along with somebody, then I can say no to working with them and I take less stress. I actually enjoy my job. So, and I don't know, the stresses are just not the same, because it's in general just quality over quantity in everything. Marketing, people, properties. So it's a much more enjoyable job, and you have less mental breakdowns and less stress and less burnouts.
Yeah, and I can't do this because the sample size becomes too small. I won't put out data that kind of where there isn't a good margin of error or confidence level. While we're seeing this significantly lower level of mental health and discrimination in the prime area, the real split, which is actually in the report, is the male-female, man-woman split. It's acute. We have a serious problem that only 15% of women in a state agency say they've not had discrimination from their colleagues. Only 15%.
Oh, Jesus, bad.
And only 12% of women say they haven't had it from clients. Meanwhile, 68% of men have not had it from colleagues, and 65% of men have not had it from clients. The difference between the experience of men in our industry and women. So when I hear certain people going, oh, it's just moaning nonsense, it's like, no. Actually, I've got statistical, significantly data here that men and women are experiencing a very different industry to each other. I mean,
that's mainstream across all markets.
That's across all markets.
So my fault really, I've kind of banded together discrimination and mental health in one kind of subcategory there, but I shouldn't do, because it's two very different subjects with two very different sets of results, isn't there? We're talking about there from a mental health point of view, how different the responses were from prime to mainstream. Is there a difference in discrimination?
Yeah, again, from colleagues, people in prime are 25% less likely to have discrimination from colleagues and 20% less likely to have discrimination from clients. So the best place to be would be a man in prime.
Yeah.
Because you're less likely to have any kind of discrimination at all.
You know what surprised me in those statistics?
And I'm not saying that's the best place to be the man in prime. Just so I don't get cancelled, let me just stress, I'm not saying that's the best version of humanity. What I'm saying is...
That's about clipping video clips.
Do not put this on
Remove
Opus
that,
with that bit clipped out. Oh, what have I just done? More media training for me. Sorry, Colin.
No, but what really surprised me is the percentage of people who let things go and just move on from it, the women, and the percentage of men who do something about it, or they go to their, let's say, aggressor or whatever, and they confront them, and it just shows you that women don't feel comfortable confronting people about it. They just kind of like cower away and shy away because they don't want to cause issues. They don't want to. Those statistics were quite.
42% of women, when they've experienced discrimination, say they did nothing or tried to ignore it, whereas 12% of men say they did nothing or tried to ignore it. 30% of women just tried to remove themselves from the situation. Only 12% of men did. So it's like, and there's a great conversation that David Mintz is doing with some people from Women in State Agency and other groups about, so go and look out for those, because they're really getting into this issue. It shows the importance of things like Women in a State Agency and women in residential property. As Verona Frankish said from Yopa, they don't want these organisations to exist. Nirvana is we don't need these organisations, but the conversations that are going on are so different. If you're a bloke like me in our industry, it's fine.
Yeah.
if you're a woman, you've got a 1 in 7 chance of dodging being discriminated against.
It's not good odds, is it?
That's just really grim. And someone said to me, Mark Schaffman, who is the journalist at the excellent journalist at Estate Agents Today, asked me, how reliable are those stats? And I said, well, based on margin of error, it could be 3% worse or 3% better. Could be 3% worse.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Is actually it could be worse than the data says, could be better, but even 85% to 82% or 85% to 88%.
No one's covering themselves in glory with that, are they?
For some women, I bet you that they are saying no, that they've not been discriminated against because it's so normal that they don't realize that what's happened is discriminatory. So they kind of just like go with the flow, they laugh about it, they move on, and they would have never clocked that. Actually, that wasn't quite right. Because it's so normalized, which is, again, such a problem. Like, I've walked away from vendors because of that. I have lost listings because I'm a young woman. Like, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So if I go back to some conversation that you and I have had in the past, Marie, as well, is that obviously a lot of, I mean, the fact that the premium market comes out of this so well suits my agenda. Of course it does. Very happy with the results of that survey. Great. You can come back next year.
I look forward to the check.
But one thing that kind of surprised me there is that, and if I think back to some of the conversations that you and I have had, Marie, is that you've told me that you've been in some situations where you've been discriminated against as an estate agent because a vendor was expecting someone who's a bit more pale, male, stale, or what have you. But in the report, it says that there's less discrimination going on in the premium and prime markets than the resi market.
Yeah.
Is that your experience?
I think so, because to get where I am and to get where women are in the prime market, you've worked hard, you've got a profile, people know who you are, you've got reviews, and so people automatically you're not like the rest, and they will, see a bit more value in that right away, and they'll discriminate a little bit less. I think it's probably worse in the bottom end of the market when, they see everybody as the same, so they might want that, old white male who's been doing it for 40 years. I still do have it. And like I said, I've lost listings because I've been the young female, but they do see me more as the expert because I've worked my way to being where I am in the prime market. So they respect that a bit more. So I think that's probably why you do have it less in the top end.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And have you personally experienced it less in the top end?
I can't really remember it too much in Connells because it was so long, it was like 10 years ago. And I do remember it in the top end when it's happened a few times. But yeah, so I couldn't really comment on that.
Okay. Anything else from the survey that particularly stood out to you as being surprising? I dread to think the amount of time you spent on this report.
And rereading it.
Yeah, even just the spreadsheet which was differentiating the prime answers from every single question. It wasn't just every question, it was like every answer of every question. You differentiated the prime answer from the mainstream answer of every single one, and then the net difference of what that was as well. So you've been to the nth degree on this, and it is one hell of a report. But is there anything else from the whole report which stood out to you as being very different or noticeable from what we're looking at here, the difference between the prime and premium markets from the mainstream market?
I think I won't pick one thing. I'll probably reiterate something we've already discussed, slightly self-serving. But before I get to that, the thing I would say, which is really important, is read the report. Most of us in this industry operate in very small businesses. We form our opinions from our immediate circle. We have a view of what's going on. For the first time properly, there's a piece of research that allows you to benchmark where you are against your peers. So you can go against all this data, work out what your numbers are and see where you sit. And literally go, am I doing what my peers are doing? Or am I doing something different? Why are all my peers doing this thing that I'm not doing because I don't like it? Maybe I should consider it because, the growth agents are all doing it. So in the report, we don't split prime and mainstream. That was for the purposes of this.
Yes.
And we might do a prime version of the report for next time if we have the amount of data that we need. But it splits growth and mainstream. So look at what growth agents do and copy them. Stand on the shoulders of giants. Everything I say is I've borrowed or stolen from someone else in reality because I've learnt from the best. I've made it my mission to learn from the best. Why we did this report is I want to be the most informed marketer about the state of a estate agency. But two things that come out of it that are really important in the research for me. The first one is the prime is a very good place to play. If you can just move your average house price up a bit, you'll do the same amount of work and earn some more money by quite a margin. And there is this tipping point around 600,000. So, you may not want to be up against the 1, 2, 3. We didn't talk about it earlier, but the biggest bulk of fees in the 1 to 2 million level.
Yep.
So the largest single is about 14% of fees are in that 1 to 2 million level.
Yep.
And it's the largest single number. But if you can just find a way, bring in someone who knows the prime space a bit better and try and move your agency a bit more into the prime, you'll make more money and you'll be able to get higher fees. You could choose to get higher fees. The other one is prime agents are just better marketers. They could spend exactly the same as the mainstream and they'd still be spending more money because they've got more money. But the point is, don't just do that. They go above and beyond. They go and spend 13% more than everybody else. They're more prolific across all channels. They're more prolific on all social media and they read more titles. So the prime agents are just they're just really going for this job hardcore. I think that's the big lesson for me is, maybe they have the luxury of time. Maybe they have the other luxuries around and other privileges that other people don't have. But get into that space. If you want to have a good living in a estate agency, try and get into that space, but do it properly. Enjoy it. Hey, this is a fantastic industry.
Yeah.
This is a fantastic, mainstream's fantastic. But if you're mainstream, automate everything. Outsource everything. Focus it because you're going to be transactional volume is going to be your business. So make yourself as efficient as possible with that and you'll have a very good life. But probably own your own agency because if you don't own your own agency, you're getting a fraction of the reward.
But also,
So
like, the
self-employed.
turnover is incredibly
Horrible.
high for low-end estate and the main line. And it's because people go in thinking, I'm going to make quick money. It's a long game. Does not happen like that. It's a lot of work. They go, oh, this is not worth it. Because I remember when I was at Connells, if you look at the hours I put in, I made less than minimum wage, and I was one of the top 3 earners of the whole of south of England at the time. And I'm looking at it going, somebody's making money, and it is not me. How am I top 3 earners? So the people at the bottom, how are they paying the bills? So they would the turnover was just incredible.
And if you are good, seek ownership. So seek to control your own destiny with your own business, but partner with someone. It's lonely out there.
Yeah.
And, by design, one of the self-employed models, however it works, partner with someone because there's so much in the industry that you won't know that you have to do. And if you're a great salesperson, 100% of your time should be focused on doing sales, not everything else. And you said earlier, find someone good who can do it for you.
Yeah.
Partner with someone, find someone good who can do it for you.
Yeah.
So I was I mentioned when we were having coffee earlier, but there's I don't know what you call him, influence that I really like, Alex Hormozy, and he was saying you have 2 choices in business. You can do a little amount of good for a lot of people, or you can do a lot of good for a very small amount of people. It is infinitely harder to do a little amount of good for a lot of people. So you have to go up market and do a lot of good for a small amount of people.
Yeah.
And to emphasize this, with our podcast, Property-Pxrn, I like to close on a bit of a stupid question. Here's a somewhat stupid question, right? A bit of a pop quiz for you.
Okay.
Right, so if you know the answer to this, don't blurt it out. Just think about what it is, and then everyone listening as well can do the same thing. I'd be really interested to know the answer to this. Do you know the name of the richest person in the world? Yeah? Simon's nodding his head.
I think so.
Marie, do you think you do?
No, I'm probably wrong.
Right, you have a guess.
No, I'm not going to. I'm completely wrong. You have a guess.
Isn't it Elon Musk?
No.
Oh, well, wow.
Yeah, it's surprising, isn't it? And I bet you'd have never even heard of this guy's name. But there's a lesson here. But I'm not going to say his name because it's a French name, and I'm going to get you to pronounce it, Marie, so I'm going to butcher it.
Cheers.
How do you say that guy's name?
Bernard Arnault.
Oh.
Bernard Arnault.
Yeah, Bernard Arnold. So that's why I
Bernard
got Marie to say it. So Bernard is the chairman of LVMH Group.
Yeah.
And they are the richest person in the world, barely ever heard of him. And all his business does, I say all it does, but it owns premium brands. So like Tiffany, Christian Dior, Fendi, Loro Piana, Bulgari, Princess Yachting, Louis, and the name is Louis Vuitton.
I didn't even know all those were owned by the same person.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't know. But the point is that despite, think of how phenomenal those, like, do you say Elon Musk? Or do you say
Elon Musk, yeah.
I mean, how phenomenal his businesses are, upturned an entire car industry. Or the other guess is Jeff Bezos, like the go-to retailer in the entire world, who are all playing principally volume games, still can't compete with someone selling posh stuff. which isn't even that technologically advanced. The service is it that hard to deliver a handbag versus go to Mars?
I forget who said it, but someone said, have rich clients because they can charge rich prices.
I saw that the other day, actually, on social media.
That was me sharing Alex on
Okay, there you go.
A perfect circle.
It was. There you go. Okay, so just a little pop quiz at the end, because it really surprised me when I heard that. But
did Elon Musk lose it all because of Twitter, X?
No, they're 2 and 3 or something like that. I don't know, some steel magnets or whatever. But anyway, it just surprised me that was the answer.
Fantastic.
Okay, so in summary then, the premium market earns you more money and you're happier because you're less discriminated and your mental health's better. Is that fair to say?
That's a good snapshot.
Yeah, it's just nice to feel appreciated. Like we were talking about that, about in the voice of the agent, the trust that people put in estate agents, and it is incredibly low. But the trust is so much higher once you've dealt with that agent. And I would like to think that all of my vendors, I would put all my money on it that it's minimum 90% that they trust me, because all of them usually say just do it because I know you've got my best interests at heart, or they know that I'm there to mitigate the risk. I'm there and they pay me for it. And I think that's the big difference, is that one of my vendors the other day, he said, you're stuck with me, Marie. Like, I don't care if I'm buying or selling in 10 years. I'm not using anybody else but you. And I said, that's the whole point. The whole point is I want to create my own little cheerleaders that will never use anybody else, will always come back to me and tell everybody you have to use Marie. Yep. So that trust level does go up. But it's nice to feel appreciated. I think in the normal market, you don't feel appreciated because you're in the cog of it all and you're one of a million agents and you're just selling the house and people don't appreciate it and they pick and they're difficult. But at the top end of the market, they really appreciate what you're doing, and that makes me love my job even more. So there's a big difference in shift there.
Well said. What a note to end on. Perfect. Marie, thank you so much.
Thank you for having
me. Simon, thank you so
pleasure.
much. And thank you for producing The Voice of the Agent. Hopefully next year we could do our second edition of Prime Cut.
Look forward to it.
See you in a year's time. Thank you so much for watching or listening to Prime Cut.